what we try to do here is answer some of the questions that we have all the time with people transitioning from mono to braid. Why should we use it? What should we use it for? How do we rig the rods? How do we, how has it really changed the whole game of fishing? So for the most part, at least with Shimano, every rod and reel is designed now for braid. And I'll use Power Pro because they were the first ones. They're owned by Shimano, and I think they've done the most research and development in this whole braid game now. So we've got different kinds of braids, and I can get into that later on. Why should we use Slick 8 as opposed to traditional Power Pro? What's wrong with my old Power Pro? And now we have new Power Pro this year as the Mark Quattro, which is 25% thinner. So we can get all into that kind of stuff. But what I'm going to go over is really connections. Everybody's always nervous about the knots. How do we connect it? I'm tying an Albright, or I think I am, and it's pulling out. You get the famous curly cue, right? And the fish swims off with everything. So the main connection is, first is to learn one of them. I don't care if it's, and we'll just talk about the two, the Albright and the Slim Beauty. If you're good at tying an Albright and you're consistent and confident, then use an Albright. I'm consistent and confident in called the Slim Beauty knot. It's a basic knot using just one loop, and I tie. You can do a bimini, which is what we do offshore, but most of the time we use a triple surgeon's loop. A single surgeon's loop is twice through. Pull it, and there's your loop. So you do it 6 times. There's your triple surgeon's loop. You can make that loop as long as you want. Offshore, we're making them pretty long, so when we get, on the business end here, you get a couple of wraps on that double line, the fish is pretty much, it's a done deal. You're not going to really break, you're going to have less tendency to bust them off at that point or break. With the Slim Beauty, it's going to a loop, so I don't care how big the braid is or how small the diameter is of my leader, it's always going to pull tight. Where an Albright, if you have 2 very dissimilar sizes, sometimes they'll pull through, come off. The offshore, mostly what we're using is a loop-to-loop splice. So if you look at they come pre-tied. These are the leaders that we use for offshore. We use them inshore also. All our jigging setups is a loop-to-loop, and we can pass this around. So this is going to be your leader going from your main line to the business end, whether it's a hook or a rig or a jig. So you can see this loop-to-loop, this loop connection is basically the Power Pro is hollow core. So if you all remember the Chinese finger cuff where you stick your fingers in there, you can't pull it, and the harder you pull, that's the same premise behind this, okay? So you can see, I can pass that around. You can see where that connection is, and you can feel the difference. So that's the mono all the way running up through there until the loop. So what does that do? That gives me a solid connection with no knots. So it's very, very smooth coming in and out of the guides. People ask, well, why do you do that? Well, here's, maybe it's not, maybe you guys don't shark fish, but this is just an extreme example of why I do it. So this is my leader here. This is as far as I can reel it. It's not going to go any further, okay, because of my swivel. So I have all that line to contend with an angry fish on the other end. And I don't care if it's a striped bass or a bluefish or a shark. So I've got to deal with all this. With a wind on, I deal with that. That's it. So I'm less apt to get tangled in it, less apt to get it wrapped around something, more apt to get the fish and call it a day. Or release them, we use all circle hooks. So it's a very easy way to do it. I can reel that right up to the tip on a wind on. And I still have the swivel and everything. So it's still the same rig. What this is going to be, instead of all this hardware, is just a loop-to-loop connection. So it'll go right through the rod, right through the guides. And we use that, like I said, we use it inshore and offshore. So this is the extreme example of that. What we do for the jigging rods is we'll use the Power Pro. Basically, when you pull this out, this is my leader, and here's starting for the wind on, going to the Power Pro. All right. So what that'll do is a couple of things. It's easy. If I need to change a leader, they come on spools. You just take the spool, put it through the loop twice, and pull it, and you're done. You're back in the game. All right, this is a big question: backing or no backing? Meaning, do I fill it with do I fill it half full with mono and then put my Power Pro? I don't see any advantage to doing that. The main advantage is going with Power Pro is that I can hold more line. So now I'm filling up the spool halfway with mono. I kind of defeated the purpose, one of the purposes of going with Power Pro. So basically, I don't use any backing. People will say, okay, what kind of knot do I use because it spins around the spool? How do I alleviate that problem? Little piece of black electrical tape. Sometimes, if you're spooling them up yourselves, what we do is a wet pack. Put the spool in a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket of water, and let it come out of the spool. Hold it with a glove and put it on. That's an easy way to do it yourselves. The other way is to do it at a tackle, let a tackle shop do it, because it's got to be packed on tight. But when you pack it on wet, it'll get tight as it dries. I still have guys come to me, oh, Captain, I hear you. I got to have mono behind the braid. Okay, then you just do a regular, not the all braid or uni to uni or whatever. Next, good stretch versus bad stretch. I've got a few good stories about this, some not so good. Stretch is good in certain applications. A lot of guys that bottom fish, right? You don't want any stretch. You're fishing, 8, 10, 12-ounce jigs in 80 feet of water. The stretch is going to be an issue. So you don't want stretch. But in an offshore application, similar to this rig here, is we've got the Spectra or braid on the bottom, and then we use what's called a top shot. So that could be a 200-yard top shot. That's going to give us some stretch, all right? Because when you get hit by a big fish, you want something's going to give. I'd rather have the line stretch a little bit, get a good hook set, than something else fail. I used to have a rod holder in the center of my transom. It's not there anymore. Tuna fish ripped it off. We saved the rod holder, and caught the fish, but I got 4 holes in the back of my boat. That was bad stretch, no stretch. And tight drags because we use circle hooks. But you just have to always remember something has to give. So in certain applications, you're going to want to put a top shot on to still have that stretch, but then still have the benefits of all the Power Pro behind it to have plenty of line. A lot of us, if we fish the reefs and stuff like that, I'll use a longer shot of mono or fluorocarbon because that has more abrasion resistancy than Power Pro. Power Pro, if you nick, it's going to pop. It's going to break. So you want to have certain, 30 foot or so of latitude there with the mono or fluorocarbon, so, help alleviate sharp structure. Bait fishing, fishing a tournament down in Cape May, we're fishing in Delaware Bay, 8-knot current, something's vibrating, I can't figure out, something's making a hum noise, didn't know what it was. I had all the rods newly spooled with Power Pro. I went and looked and held the rods, you could feel them vibrate, it was just like a kite string in the wind. So there's certain applications, you gotta be careful, and we didn't get a bite. I ripped it all off right there, then and there, took a spool of 25-pound monofilament, spooled them up, started catching fish. With the charters, I like to have the mono because I have the give, and I have got permanent cuts on my hands from Power Pro. Is very dangerous stuff. So when you've got 6 or 7 guys that aren't the most experienced with 30-pound bass running around the boat, it's a lot easier to untang monofilament than it is to Power Pro. So you have to remember there is a safety issue, it could be, with Power Pro. It'll cut you. It'll cut you bad. Going back to stretch, we've had to adjust our drags a little bit looser, especially on a lever drag. It's easy just to crank it up, but I start looser and then, give it more drag as needed. And I always know where my drags are, set on a scale. The big change in our industry is everything. If you remember some of us older people in the room, the old Penn Senators, all this big stuff, because you needed these big reels to carry the line. You don't need any of that anymore with all the carbon fibers and all this thing, with the new composite materials that we make the drag systems with. everything's scaled down. You know, I'll pull out a Talica 25 and say, look, you can get rid of all your 50s and 80s and use this reel. And the guys look at me cross-eyed, but it's true. So everything is much lighter because of Power Pro, because you've got this really thin diameter line. You don't need these big, huge spools to carry 900 yards. I mean, some of my reels carry 900 yards of line. It's almost a mile of line. It's been a big change in the industry where everything's lighter and easier to manage and all that. You're really fighting the fish and not the tackle. Jigging, I showed you the typical jigging setups. There's two of them I brought, a lighter and a heavier one. This is a bit heavier for, you know, for deeper water, for bigger fish. It's really, the systems are designed for the jig. So if you know you're going to be using larger jigs, then you go with a heavier rod. It's really not for the bigger fish. It's really for the jigs, because all our rods, I've caught big fish on the small rods and small fish on the big rods. It's really the jig and how you can control that jig and how the jig reacts. We'll do trolling. A big question comes up, Cap, I don't want to pull wire. A lot of people want to pull spoons with Power Pro. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. Obviously it works, but there's two ways to do it. You can put a drail really far from the spoon so it doesn't inhibit the action of the spoon. But then you've got all this to deal with again, right? There's another method that Tony Maja uses, which is basically a three-way swivel and then drop a piece of Power Pro off of that with a weight.
Please subscribe to our Jersey Devil Sport Fishing channel for more fishing adventures, tips, and tactics. See you out on the water and wishing you tight lines.
I am Captain Brian Rice of Jersey Devil Sport Fishing, bringing you the best of New Jersey fishing for stripers, sharks, tuna, and the many other abundant sport fish that fly the New York Bight and Atlantic after the Hudson Canyon. I've been fishing these waters since I could walk, and we'll be showing you the where and how of catching quality fish. Me and my team give you a view right from the cockpit and show you how to get in on the action.